Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Predator 2 City Hunter. Now before I get into this figure, I just want to mention right up front the reason why I'm not doing a figure wars on this video. If you guys remember, I had previously reviewed the McFarlane Predator 2 figure. So, the same character in two different incarnations. And I was debating whether or not I was going to go do a figure wars on this, but the answer came down to be a simple no. Basically what it is we're going to get, in the end, at least two versions of the City Hunter, masked and unmasked. Now there are about at least 4 different versions that I've seen of the McFarlane one. And mine, I got used. He was broken. I think he might be missing some pieces. I lost his helmet. And it's not a fair comparison, and there's no way I could do a fair comparison right now. If I get another McFarlane down the line that's more intact, even then I might not be able to do it with any justification, seeing as how many different versions of this figure McFarlane released. That's just my quick explanation of why we're not going into that territory today, though I will compare him to the McFarlane one from time to time. One more thing I want to point out about this figure before I get into the review of him is NECA has gone with a somewhat new body for these figures. In my last set of Predator reviews over the summer, I had mentioned that I was kind of annoyed with the fact that they kept releasing the same body repainted. It was all that classic Predator repainted, some slightly tweaked parts, but really the same thing over and over. And while I liked getting the characters, I was upset that it was all the same. With the Predator 2 line, it seems like NECA is taking a completely different look at the Predators themselves. And it has led to one unfortunate change. If we bring in the classic Predator here, you can see that there is a height difference between the two. I have them both standing up about as tall as they'll go. And with the new hips on this Predator, which we'll get into later with articulation, they end up being a slightly taller figure. Now, if you have all these together, it might look a little weird to have some slightly taller Predators, but with the articulation, I'm thinking nobody's going to portray them just standing straight up, and they're going to be all different heights and all different mixed up looks. So I think that can be avoided within a display. But I want to point it out here and now that it is a different body from the old one in a lot of different ways. So, no more repainting on this line. It looks like we're probably going to be moving forward with this body for the foreseeable future. And so maybe sometime in the spring when they get to the 5th wave of Predator figures overall, I'll probably be talking about how sick I am of this body. But for now, I am refreshed and happy to see it. Taking a look at the figure on its own, I'm going to talk about the thing that I've heard the most gripes about, which is the paint job, particularly on the head of the figure. In the movie, the detailing on the head was a lot more intricate. It had a lot more detail. There was marks, almost like diamonds within these diamonds. I was actually looking at the bonus features on my DVD the other day, and there was a really nice shot of basically this head sitting in Stan Winston's shop. And there's a lot more detail on the head, different highlights. NECA got the essence of it, but they didn't pull it off entirely. I've heard from some talkings with NECA that it's mostly the Chinese factory's fault. Their prototype that they displayed at Comic-Con was beautiful, spot on, perfect. It was also double the size of these. So it's a little hard to make that comparison too well, but it does look like the character. By comparison, bringing in the McFarlane version, the paint is just overall really dark and dingy on it. And people have been talking about this figure like it's correct, but it definitely isn't. It definitely does not have the same look that the prop did in the movie. So, it's more accurate than McFarlane's, but it's still just not quite right. However, the sculpt is really, really nice on it. The mandibles are well done. It's got the extra fangs down here at the bottom like it's supposed to. It's really well detailed in general. The eyes look good in there. Now I did see a couple of these on the pegs with eyes kind of leading off to one side or the other. We can also see the head is a much more dramatic slant than the older version, which is accurate to the film. The other standard soft rubber dreadlocks here with all their adornments and jewelry. Looking very nice. One other thing I have issues with is the plasma caster up here. It is nicely executed. It sits on a ball joint, see if I could do this without blocking it out entirely, because it is very small. It sits on a ball joint on top of kind of a swivelly bit up here. You could actually take it and retract it. It slides down about here on this channel on his armor. So then you can swivel it back up to be in action mode. This is a really nice touch on NECA's part. However, back to McFarlane, I like theirs better. It's a little more movie accurate. It only hinged at the top, but it actually had this nice long arm bar here, which I think NECA's really needed to be more movie accurate. It may not need to be as long as the one McFarlane put on, but it did need a little bit more of an extension out around his dreadlocks. Because honestly, in general, it just kind of gets in the way so close. The sculpting they did on it, however, is really nice, really movie accurate, has that kind of samurai look. All of his armor has that samurai look. Has the twin ports here. I don't know if there's actually a reason for the two different ports, but it was in the movie. I did double check. Speaking of his armor, he's got his little med pack, his shoulder pads, really nicely done. These are all kind of the extra piece here, and these parts are sculpted solid, but some of the other parts like the shoulders and such are the rubber, allowing you to keep your articulation, which is fantastic. As with the front as well. Really nicely done. It's hard to tell just by looking what's rubber and what's sculpt, which is pretty cool. He's got his little Predator man purse around his shoulder here on a string. He also has an additional belt that's also on a string, which has another little pocket type device over here, along with some armor pieces, and being on a string gives it a really nice look of being a belt on a separate piece. The netting on him is really nicely done, really well painted. There aren't many gaps in it, which is a great thing. There's also a really nice paint app underneath it, and the skin texture looks phenomenal. Carries over onto the arm. He has the one arm with the fishnet and the one without. Here's his gauntlet with the self-destruct mechanism. You can see the box here that he would flip open to access his self-destruct mechanism. I feel like it's in the wrong position because his elbow is right here. I feel like it should have been moved about 90 degrees this way. But still looks good. I just wish it would have been more in that position. But he can't reach across himself to touch it anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter. And his hand is very nicely sculpted and well done. He's got his little extra claw back here on his wrist. The paint app is very nice. I really do like the paint app everywhere but the head, which means getting the one with the mask on is going to be fantastic, I think. Over here, we have the standard gauntlet, which is different than the P1 gauntlet, which is, once again, movie accurate, with his blades, which are updated for this film as well. They no longer have the slot coming back in here, which is really nice attention to detail on NECA's part. And they function just like the old one. You pull them in and out. It looks really good. See down here he has the holster for his disc. I'll talk more about the disc in a little bit. His legs, nicely detailed with the fishnets. He has his knee guards here. Shin guards. Over here he has his net launcher. And then his bare feet, which makes me believe these are a brand new foot sculpt, because I don't think we've gotten a barefoot Predator before this one. Interesting detail. Not to impede articulation, NECA actually gave the Predator a rubber butt. That may be the weirdest thing I've ever said on a review so far. I feel so wrong doing this. The butt is a rubber piece. So you could actually take it and move his leg back, and his butt's still there. It doesn't impede his articulation. It's unique. It's a great idea. Wow, that caught me off guard. I have to say, that really caught me off guard. For a weapon, the only real weapon he comes with is the smart disc here, which is nicely sculpted. McFarlane had given us one as well. It was very, very similar sculpt-wise. There's more of a brass paint on the NECA version. It will plug into his little holster on the side here, but not particularly well. It doesn't really stay in, but if you have him posed and you wanted it just plugged in there, you'll probably be good. He also doesn't hold it well. I'm not even going to bother trying to get it into his hand right now, but when we get to the Boar Predator in a review or two, I'll show you one that has a hand made to hold this disc. This Predator is not made to hold this disc, which is kind of odd, seeing as It's his only real weapon outside of his gauntlet and his plasma caster, which, I always complain, he doesn't have a helmet, he's not using the plasma caster. In the way of articulation, he has a ball-jointed head, pin and socket shoulders, giving a great range of articulation, bend and swivel at the elbow, ball-jointed hands, and new articulation here, we have a ball-jointed waist, which gives some extra movement there. Also, pin and socket legs, which is phenomenal. We can get him in some new, much deeper stances. Swivel at the upper leg, which is very similar to the old V-cut. Bended the knee in 2 points. The joint's hidden pretty well by his armor here, which is also awesome. And a ball-jointed ankle. And here we have him one last time with his McFarlane counterpart. I feel like this is the one to have. McFarlane had a lot of issues. The articulation they tried to put into it made him kind of weird. I know I said I wasn't going to make this Figure Wars, but the NECA one is definitely worth having over the old McFarlane, particularly this version at least. He's a cool figure. I wasn't a fan of the actual movie of Predator 2, except for the end, when the Predator is actually in it and chasing Danny Glover, and I feel like it's one of those movies that had cool characters and bad execution of the characters themselves. So I'm definitely happy to have this one in a new updated format that just looks really nice outside of the paint on the head. Even that is passable. I could definitely let that one slide a little bit based on the overall quality of the figure itself. However, if the paint on the head bugs you as much as I've heard it bugs some people, Toys R Us is re-releasing the same body with a masked head in a 2-pack, which should be out in just a few weeks. So you might want to hold off and just get that one instead if the paint on the head of this one is bugging you. But overall, I think he's a really awesome figure. The articulation they added is fantastic. And I'm really excited to see the masked version, to see how it stacks up compared to this guy. So that's it for this Outside the Box review. We got 2 more Predator figures in this wave to handle, so stay tuned for more to come.